Bonjour, les consulats. Bonjour, Guinea cause because I do them. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, elders, ministers, special guests, honored guests. I'm very happy to be here, very honored to be asked to say a few words for Murray. I thought of a lot of things that I could say this evening, but I guess I wanted to be meaningful. So, Chief Justice, Chancellor, Chief Commissioner, Doctor, Senator Sinclair, I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge your presence, your work, and your legacy. I, like many others in this room and across Turtle Island, owe you a debt of gratitude and have great respect for you and the work that you have done for our people. You've had an impact on Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people alike, and you have achieved great things in your lifetime. You have achieved these things within spaces that were never occupied by Indigenous people. And in doing so, you have set a precedent. You have set a path and the belief that anything is possible. You are a trailblazer. You are an icon. And I'm so privileged to share this stage with you. So Senator Sinclair, on behalf of the people here and on behalf of the people of Peguis, I would like to say miigwech for all of your hard work, your tireless devotion, your dedication to improving the lives of not only Aboriginal people, Indigenous people, but all of Canada. I say miigwech Murray. Thank you so much.
Bonjour, Conestoga. Mizenegija condition costs to go to them. Wow, what a hell of a gathering. Thank you very much for all of you who showed up and participated in this evening. On a small aside, I want to give my apologies to Tom Jackson. I ran over his toes twice tonight. So, sorry, Tom. I won't do that again. And I'd like to thank the elder who gave the opening prayer and set us off on the right course. In the few minutes that I've been asked to say a few words to you, I want to tell you a little bit about why I did what I did and did what I did in the way that I did it. And it has to do with the fact that when I was younger, almost from the time that I was in my early grades, I wondered about things. And one of the things I wondered about was, why are they not honoring our tree? My grandfather had talked to me about the tree, and yet I knew, because of my own studies, that the treaty was not being honored. And I wondered why. And that kind of stayed with me most of my life. And later on, when I was making a decision about what my career was going to be, two things kind of governed my decision making. One was that I had to convince my grandmother to let me go to university because she wanted me to be a priest. Yeah, right, that's what I thought too. And so that didn't happen, but I had to be persuasive with her because she was a very firm lady, and took a long time to persuade her because she had the forms that needed to be signed so I could take university entrance programs. And so on the very last day, I said to her, I need to have those forms signed because I have to hand them in today so I can go to university. And she said to me, all right, I'll sign this for you, but I don't want you to waste your education there. I want you to promise me that whatever it is that you study, whatever it is that you do, that you'll always do it for the people, and that you'll always think about them as you're going about your work. Even if you're a carpenter like your grandfather is, just think about them. And so that's guided me in my decision making all the way along. I always ask myself a question, and that is, what would my grandmother think about what I am about to decide? What would be her thought? And so she was a very big influence in the course of my career development. And then when I was making decisions at university about why am I here? Why am I in law school? Why am I going into law school? Because we had to have this talking circle at the beginning to explain to each other why we're going into law school. And at that time I said, I'm here because I need to understand. I need to understand why our people have been treated like they've been treated. I need to understand why the treaty which we had just signed in 1871 was being dishonored by 1889 in that phase, and I need to understand why it was so badly interpreted that children were being taken away. I need to understand what was the plan. And so, and in particular, I needed to understand why the treaty couldn't be honored again. And so I spent my legal career trying to answer many of those questions, because each time you answer a question, it leads to other questions. And so I used that time when I was in law school, not just to answer the question that I went in there with, but to start to ask and answer other questions as well. And so I came out of law school very well informed about what the law was and how it had been misinterpreted and how it had been misinterpreted, and in particular why it was misinterpreted. And it had to do with the fact that early on I concluded that everything was due to the fact that our public education system, which educated my relatives in residential school and educated our friends in the white community in public schools as well, was founded upon principles of white supremacy. Our education system is a white supremacist tool. And so, having sorted that out, I decided that it was about time somebody started speaking about those things. And so I was asked by the government of Manitoba if I would agree to become a judge. Initially I said no. I said, you guys don't pay enough. I'm making more money as a lawyer than you ought to be able to pay me as a judge. But they offered me a position as the associate chief judge, and so I accepted that. And timing being what it is, I was a judge sworn in on Friday, March the 5th, I think, or 3rd. And that was a Friday. On the following Tuesday, J.J. Harper was shot in the streets of Winnipeg by a city policeman. And then on Wednesday, the government of Manitoba fell in a vote of non-confidence. And so they had to call an election. They called an election by Friday. And that Friday, they also, because of pressure from various political organizations, including chiefs, they created the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry. And so initially they asked me if I would be the sole head of the Aboriginal Justice Inquiry. But I said, no, it would be a mistake to put an Indigenous guy as a head of this important inquiry. We have to have a white guy doing it with me who has credibility and who works to understand as well. And so they appointed my colleague and subsequently my really good friend, the Associate Chief Justice of the Court of Queen's Bench, Alvin Hamilton, as a co-commissioner. And so we then set out about doing our work. And we asked, with the support of the chiefs, for the Helen Betty Osborne case to be included in our mandate as well. And they gave us that as well. But we asked for a very broad mandate to look at the relationship between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people within the justice system. And that's when we first came to the conclusion that the justice system was founded upon the principles of white supremacy that had been used to educate everybody in Canada. And so, as we said in our report, that judges and prosecutors and lawyers are inherently trained to follow the laws of Canada and the laws of England because they believe that's the only way to do things. But there's another way, we said, and that is to take a serious look at the way that Indigenous people have governed themselves historically and can govern themselves. And so that began some serious discussions with the government of Canada and the government of Manitoba. But it took a while because they didn't easily accept that. So I spent the better part of the next 10 or 15 years educating judges to start looking at the way they are judging Indigenous people, to put all of that together and to think about it carefully before they did what they did. And then the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples was created, and in the Royal Commission report, they talked about the very same thing. In fact, they copied some of the work that we did in the AJI. And when we saw that happening, then it influenced, we could see that it influenced not only judges who were reading that, but also it influenced the government of Canada, who developed changes to the criminal code, which resulted in the Gladue reports, which today are being misapplied, but still, at least we know what's going on out there, and we still have work to do with regard to that. And the other day I spoke at a conference on a summit on justice, and I shared some of these very same thoughts with them, and that is that we need to look carefully and foremost at the relationship that Indigenous youth have with their community if we are going to create a more just system. Because everything turns on the fact that Indigenous youth were growing up without a sense of what their community was and who their community is. And so some of that has to do with the fact that residential school survivors were coming home and being put in charge of the community who themselves had no idea about their own collective identity, their own sense of community. And so they needed some work. And in the final work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, we said that reconciliation is about developing a relationship of mutual respect. But before you can have a relationship of mutual respect, we firstly have to work to get back to Indigenous people their sense of self-respect. And we've not done that. And because of that, our young people, as with many of our older people, including some of our leaders, had no sense of their relationship and responsibility to the people in their community. They didn't have a sense of community, and we needed to give them that sense of community. So we still have a long way to go. Don't anybody ever think that we are close to achieving reconciliation. We are not. We have a better understanding. There are more studies. There's more information out there. But understanding how it works and how it applies and what it does to people really is going to take us a tremendous amount of work. And I want to thank all of those who've been working in this field now for some time for the work that you've been doing. And finally, in closing, I want to thank my good friend, Phil Fontaine, for the work that he did. He gave rise to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Residential Schools Settlement Agreement with his remarks before anybody else had ever spoken publicly about the genocide going on in residential schools and the impact that it was having on people's lives after the schools had closed even. And because of such an influential man making such remarks, he was able to heighten the interest level of the media and of government, as well as our own political leaders and other political leaders in the country. And so he doesn't get enough credit for the fact that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission owes him a debt of gratitude. And so I want to indicate to him how much I love him for having done that for us and how much we relied upon his leadership to get us to the point where we could say and do what we said and did in the TRC report. So we have a long way to go, as I said. It took many generations to create the mess that was in many of our communities. But now our communities are beginning to develop a sense of self, a sense of community. And leadership from the chiefs who are in this room show what can happen when they step up and take charge of developing a sense of not just community, but a sense of sovereignty, a sense of true self and who the people are. And so I didn't do that. They're doing that. And they're doing that because they have their own understanding And when I see them speaking at gatherings such as this, I am overwhelmed with gratitude that they have picked up on hoping to answer those questions that I had when I went to law school. So I say miigwech to all of the chiefs who are here. I say miigwech to all of the leaders who have been listening to them and respecting the fact that they have so much influence economically, socially, politically, that they know that they ignore what we are saying, what our leaders are saying, at their own peril. So, miigwech to all of you. And thank you for this wonderful honor and for the wonderful sense of commitment that not only you have shown to the work that I've been involved in, but also commitment that I've had to developing a sense of community. Miigwech.
Where do I go?
Now they're gonna